Hi friends, welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today on John's Briefs, something a little different. I have a follow-up for you, both from news releases as well as some inside baseball, on a case that we covered a couple of years ago here on Active Self-Protection Extra that I've been doing some expert witness consulting work on. Thankfully, it looks like it's resolved today. I'm gonna give you the follow-up on Jillian and Eric Wuestenburg.
To win the fight after the fight, you need help. After a use of force, I trust Firearms Legal Protection to help me win the fight for the rest of my life. From their 24/7 attorney-answered hotline to coverage for the use of all legal tools, Firearms Legal Protection has you covered. Get a discount by signing up at the link below.
So I've had to wait for some significant time to kind of talk about this one because, there's NDA stuff that happens when you're doing expert consultation on these kinds of cases. And I got to tell you, this case has been a mess. I have three links actually, that I will put in the description. One is the raw video of the original kind of viral video that was put out there showing Jillian and her husband Eric and the defensive encounter that they were in. They were then both charged with felonies in the event. We did an interview on Active Self-Protection Extra with Jillian and Eric and their two attorneys, Terry Johnson and Dean Greenblatt, who, when this thing all went down, they had the right to split those into, their charges rather than being charged together as kind of one, that they each faced the charges individually. And so, Terry was an attorney and Dean was an attorney, and they split the cases, okay? But we did about a 50-minute interview with them to tell kind of their side of the story. And then I also put a link in the description to the news story that this past Monday, thankfully, finally, charges were dropped in this particular case. So let's think about that. It was almost 3 years ago that all of this went down. And just finally now, Eric and Jillian can breathe a sigh of relief and kind of call it a day. Now, what happened there? If you will go and read the news story that I've linked in the description, what happened is that on Monday, the prosecution's key witnesses, particularly the 15-year-old who was taking the cell phone video and her mother, who was kind of the other actor, the complainant, as it were, not the victim, because we don't have a crime that has been adjudicated here. So the complainant, not the victim, they did not show up to court. And since they didn't show up to court, the prosecution dropped its case. So charges have been dropped in this case, and they will not be refiled, and so they can move on with their lives. Now, that said, why didn't they? Well, I can't tell you that. I have not been in any kind of contact with the complainant at all. Of course, that would be inappropriate because I was retained as an expert consultant for the defense in this particular case. I can say, though, that some interesting stuff here that's maybe a little inside baseball, that on the day before the statute would have expired, the complainant did file a civil suit against the Wuestenburgs. And however, now that the charges have been dropped, there's no finding of any kind of guilt on the part of the Wuestenburgs. Well, there's a little bit of danger here in the civil suit in terms of Michigan law, because under Michigan law, in a civil suit, if the plaintiff is not found in the right, so if the defendant is found in the right instead of the plaintiff, well, then the defendant can turn around and ask for the plaintiff to pay their attorney's fees, which would have been pretty exorbitant in this case. So it looks like the civil suit has been dropped as well. And again, I don't know why they did that, but I mean, here's the reality of things. Eric and Jillian are not rich people. They don't have any money to attach. They don't have any kind of funds for these people to win, and maybe perhaps once they realized, hey, we're not going to win any money, there's no money to be had in this particular case, so then we're not going to participate in the criminal case either, and then the whole thing just evaporated. Now, that said, I want to talk about a couple things here and then the implications of it for us as self-defenders. Number one, I know because I talked to Terry Johnson before making this video, and I can tell you that the Wuestenburgs kind of feel like they won by forfeit, right? Like they got all this, did all this work, got all this time, prepared in all these capacities, and now they just kind of won by forfeit, and they weren't vindicated in court. They just kind of won by default. And so that's kind of an emotional letdown. Now, again, it's better than going to court, got to be honest with you, because you might lose in court. You never know what a jury's going to say. But still, it's hard for them emotionally to go through. Number two, I could tell you that Terry and Dean are incredible humans. I don't know what their legal status is or what they were charging the Wuestenburgs for their services, but I know and guarantee you that it was a significantly reduced fee. And so, but in a usual and normal sense, this would have been an incredibly expensive defense because of all the time that's dragged on to get into it. So, there's still some significant financial repercussions for the Wuestenbergs. And third, recognize they both lost their jobs. I mean, these folks now are they were both in management, both in fairly responsible and lucrative professions. And as a result of the publicity of this, they both lost their jobs. They're both working in different jobs now. I don't think either of which are maybe as prestigious or any of those things, but thankfully they're trying to get back on their feet and those kinds of things. So what does all that mean for you and I? Well, I want you to remember the process is the punishment, that the criminal system, the justice system in America, the legal system in America, just going through the process is a significant punishment. Punishment of time, punishment of money, punishment of the many sleepless nights wondering if you are going to be locked up for a significant amount of time. Felony charges here were, and in Michigan, they have a felony firearm enhancement that you serve 2 years in prison with no parole or anything for the firearm portion before anything else happens. And so I think that I just want you to recognize that when you use your firearm, it is a serious issue. Now, even in the end of things, if you are vindicated, even if at the end of things you are deemed justified or at least not guilty or at least not prosecuted and charges get dropped, that even so, it could have vast implications for your life. Now, I've seen people that have gotten in defensive gunfights and literally had the prosecutor come and shake their hand and say, thank you for bettering your community. I've seen that too. But of course, that's the best case scenario, and I would always recommend that we prepare for the worst case scenario in this particular way, and that way we know that we are ready for it. I also think that we want to think about here, that this is why we only use our firearm as a tool of last resort. This is why we say, well, wait a minute, if I have to go through all this, for the next 3 years, I have to deal with being dragged through the mud on social media, being dragged through the mud in the mainstream media, taking days off work to go to court, being fired from my job and having to find a new career. If all those things are if the alternative to using your gun is to not use it and die, well, then you use your gun and you deal with the potential repercussions. You just say, wait a minute, if I was going to be dead, well, then I'm going to use my firearm in this particular case. And recognize in Michigan, the actual presentation of a firearm in their case law is very firmly established. It's ordinary force. It's not deadly force. It's ordinary force. So, that was the argument that their attorneys were going to make and make very successfully in that court case. And I think had it been adjudicated, they would have won. I think that the chances of them winning were incredibly high. And I was very confident that they were going to prevail in that. But still, the process is the punishment, and we should remember that we only want to use our firearm as a tool of last resort. That said, I don't think Jillian had any other options. Remember, if you go listen to, and I would recommend, it's about 50 minutes long, our interview with them, that when the woman smacked the back of that minivan, it disabled it. It put it in no-go mode because it felt like it had been in a wreck, like something was wrong. So the car is shut down. You have to shut the car down and open the door when it's in park in order to get it to reset. And after, I think, 15 seconds, it will restart and be able to move again. And so that car was dead, and they didn't know kind of what was going on in an emergency moment. Jillian got out to see if somebody had been hurt, and that's when that woman, you could see she gets right up to her. She gets within a couple of inches of her with a whole bunch of other threatening people around, and that's when Jillian drew her firearm and said, back up, get away from me, which is a justified use of defensive force. Now, I've said it many times that maybe, a little bit of force applied earlier would maybe prevent a lot more force being able to be applied or needing to be applied later. This is one of the reasons I carry, less lethals. I carry OC spray all the time because, again, people freaking out without any kind of weapons around. If I have a high level of skill, then maybe I bless the deserving with the hot sauce before going to the firearm, and maybe this doesn't come up in such a big way. That's a minor thing, and again, I'm not bagging on Jillian. I think she did what she had to do in the moment. First of all, she didn't have no OC spray on her. Second of all, she's not an empty-handed skills master. Third, she's defending her 100% disabled husband, and she had to do what she had to do in the moment, and I think that the prosecution dropping charges finally does that. I will also say I think that these charges initially were probably politically motivated. We're right in the beginning of the pandemic here, kind of, about 2 months after the pandemic had begun, 2.5 months. after, people been locked in their homes, kind of mad. There's a lot of racial overtones. This is in the summer of 2020 when all of the race riots were going on. And so I do think that there was some political stuff in bringing these charges, whether the prosecutor felt like they had to, or it was going to cost them their job, or if they felt like they needed to build a base or whatever. That prosecutor since was defeated in the following election and isn't an issue anymore. Although the prosecutor that took that office didn't dismiss the charges until such time as the freaking witnesses didn't show up either. So no credit to you, bub. I'm grateful for that. I have heard, through Terry that Jillian was grateful for all of the support that you at Active Self-Protection Extra and all you ASP Guardians provided them, and the comments, and especially in the GoFundMe. So thank you so much to all of you for that. As far as for me, this is how expert cases go. So often, you show up, you provide some consultation. They didn't need me to testify at trial. I wasn't scheduled to testify at trial for them. I helped Terry and Dean kind of make their defense up a little bit, gave them some ideas, went back and forth on a couple of the things there. So then they were able to make their defense and they didn't need me to establish anything further. But many times this is how it goes, right? You show up or the week before trial and all of a sudden there's a couple of motions and the trial evaporates. And this is the way it's supposed to go. So few of them actually go through trial. And that's the way the system is designed to work, and in this case, it did. I'm hopeful that here very quickly that the civil suit will go away, because there's real risk for the complainant in that civil trial. I think it will go away, and I wish Jillian and Eric a return to peaceful living and a return to quiet living. Let's let them get out of the spotlight. That's why I didn't bring them back on Active Self-Protection Extra here right away. I want them to kind of just be able to return to the quiet, private life that they had earned. Big takeaway from this one, friends: only use your firearm as a tool of last resort. Make sure that it's worth being prosecuted for, so that if you do, you go, man, hey, listen, it's worth it, even though this stinks in every regard. I didn't have any other choice. Like Jillian did, then that's why we do it. So hope that helps you. Make sure you're using your firearm only as a tool of last resort.